5, 4, 3, 2,
0.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Mafia Podcast, NBA Edition. My name is Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy, and I'm here with my co-host, the Fantasy Caveman, and today we are discussing the New York Knicks. And we are in the middle of our mini-series where we are giving a recap of the 2019-2020 season, and then we're looking towards their off-season and beyond to give you a little bit of a preview there. So let's dive into 2019-2020 season. Their record was 21-45. They fired their head coach David Fizdale in the middle of the season. He was 4-18, so he had a wonderful record. The assistant coach Mike Miller, not the former player, took over, and he was 17-27, so a little bit better. I mean, it couldn't have been much worse. But there's been a lot of rumors, so Mike Miller's probably not going to be their coach long term. Actually, within the last week, there's been a lot of rumors that they're going to hire Tom Thibodeau. I mean, Tom Thibodeau has been around the league quite a few times now. I don't know how many times that guy has to fail running an organization before people stop hiring him. But to me, that is just such a New York Knicks hire. When you think of a guy that has no track record of proven success, he just goes places, the players don't like him, he gets fired. He goes somewhere else, in Chicago. It happened again last year in Minnesota. I mean, he keeps getting fired no matter where he goes. So I don't know exactly what they see in him. I know he's a tough, gritty coach. People love him for that, but maybe he's better served as an assistant coach. So going into some of their stat leaders from last season, Marcus Morris led the team in points with 19.6. Julius Randle was second. Julius Randle is one of their, probably their best player right now. He averaged 19.5 points. RJ Barrett, their rookie last season, averaged 14.3. Went through a lot of the struggles that you see. That's pretty common from a lot of rookies. But he showed some promise on the offensive end. Rebounding leaders, Julius Randle at 9.7, Mitchell Robinson with 7. Assist leaders, Alfred Payne, a name that I'll bring up again in a moment, had 7.2 assists. And then steals, Alfred Payne also led the team with 1.6. RJ Barrett had 1. And then blocks, Mitchell Robinson led the team with 2. So who impressed you this season? What notes do you have on the 2019-2020 season for the Knicks?
Before we go over a couple of players that impressed me, I think we're not going to touch too much on this. At least I don't want to, but the whole Spike Lee situation, I mean, that's probably the biggest storyline of the season. And that has nothing to do with the players themselves.
You got beef with Spike Lee?
I don't know. I'm on Spike Lee, so I'm just saying that's the biggest storyline of the year, if we're talking about the 2019 season for him. Also, I think the interesting thing to watch with the not really, but more going forward, and I'm sure I'll talk about this a little more when we talk about next season, but Leon Rose is now running the show, who is a former agent. So that could be something to keep an eye on, how he kind of handles things. But a couple of guys that you already mentioned, one of the leaders, Mitchell Robinson. Like, people don't realize a couple things on him. So he shot 75.6% from the restricted area last year, where he took 96% of his shots came from the restricted area last year.
You say that like it's surprising.
I mean, it was third among the 89 players with at least 200 restricted attempts. So, and actually he set the highest field goal percentage mark in NBA history last year. He shot 74.2% from the field last year, which I don't think anybody. It's crazy. He set an NBA record and I don't think anybody knows about it. Probably because he plays for the Knicks. Right? Did you know that?
I mean, no, I've never even heard that till right now. I think maybe people are more concerned with COVID, but I mean, so the thing with Mitchell Robinson for me too, before I let you talk about him a little more, he was grossly misused by the Knicks last year. I mean, he only averaged 23 minutes. He only started 7 games. I mean, they were starting old veterans, and this is a rebuilding team, and those minutes are very valuable for their young players. And it just shows how mismanaged the Knicks were. I mean, and even after David Fizdale got fired, I mean, Mike Miller, the trend continued. They just continued to bench Mitchell Robinson, and it's silly. I mean, he's a very solid defender. I already mentioned his blocks, and his rebounding averages were very impressive considering the limited number of minutes that he played.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Less than you talk about he's also a good rebounder. I mean, he grabbed 12.2% of available offensive rebounds, which was the 6th best mark among 218 players who average at least 20 minutes in 35 games or more. So he's just a board monster. He just grabs the boards. I mean, he's a old school type center where he's not gonna shoot outside the restricted area. But I'm surprised. I don't know where those 4% of shots that didn't come from the restricted area came from, because I certainly didn't see any shot outside the restricted area of Robinson last year. Maybe some like heaves last minute or some shit like that. But also another guy I want to bring up, Alfred Payne. So quick thing for you: if I mention LeBron James, Luka Doncic, and Trae Young in the same sentence as Alfred Payne, what would you think of that?
I would think that you need to cut your drinking out.
Well, might be true, but the similarity here is him along with those 3 guys are the only players who played at least 500 minutes and accounted for more than half their team's assists while they were on the floor. So that, I don't know if that probably speaks more to how bad everybody else on the Knicks was in terms of passing the ball and that, but still impressive. They scored 7 points more per 100 possessions with Alfred Payne on the court. So you talk about the Knicks, who are kind of meh and kind of disgrace of a team as a whole. But Alfred Payne actually, surprising. He kind of. I mean, obviously with the Knicks, everybody goes under the radar because nobody matters. But
wow.
Yeah, man, I just don't. Man, is it kind of obvious that I'm really not a fan of the Knicks?
No, it's not.
No, not? Okay, good. But yeah, Alfred Payne was a silent killer for him last year, distributing the ball. So it was kind of impressive.
Yeah, so I'm really on the fence with Alfred Payne. I really like Alfred Payne. He's actually a very nice defender as well. I mean, he rebounds the ball for a guard, almost average 5 rebounds a game. You're already mentioning the assist totals, which are very impressive. Averages over 1.5 steals. So, I mean, when you look at it, very impressive numbers. But for me personally, I just ask myself, if I want to make the playoffs and I want to win an NBA championship, is Alfred Payne my point guard? I mean, I think the answer is no. I mean, I think that he's a very, very valuable bench piece and the kind of guy that I'd want as my backup point guard. But, I think that's just the state of the Knicks. Is Alfred Payne maybe a guy who's a championship caliber bench player, is one of their best players in their starting lineup. So
you're not. I mean, it's the Knicks. Pretty much 29 other teams, he might be the bench point guard, but it's the Knicks. So, arguably, he's probably. I would say he probably was their second best player that season behind Mitchell Robinson. RJ Barrett is also a guy. I mean,
Julius Randle's their best. Come on.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that fella.
Julius Randle is one of the most underrated players in the NBA, and now he's on the Knicks and nobody cares.
See, exactly. Like, I kind of, I've been talking about these guys, and, it's the Knicks, so I kind of forget who their best player is just because it's the Knicks. Yeah, I kind of just assume nobody's good because it's the Knicks. But so, yeah, but obviously Randall. But it's kind of knew that he had this kind of potential. So.
Yeah. I mean, 19.5 points, 9.7 rebounds, so impressive numbers for him. Going through the rest of their starting lineup, as of right now, Alfred Payton is their starting point guard. They have Frank Nick. I can never pronounce this guy's name.
I can't. Nope. I tried to pronounce it, but stopped mid try.
Frank Nidalinka. It's something like that. He's French. Hit their first round pick from a few years ago. And then they have Dennis Smith still on the roster, who's kind of a forgotten man, but he had a really nice rookie season with the Mavericks and just kind of faded away. So he's still there, though. He's more bench depth. So I kind of like their point guard situation. Even Frank, I mean, he's a very good defender at point guard. Not a guy that I want starting, but I feel like they have three really nice bench point guards. Shooting guard RJ Barrett was starting. They also had Frank backing him up, Reggie Bullock, and Kevin Knox, another forgotten man who, once again, the Knicks just really misused their young players last year, and I can't really say that enough. Shooting forward, they have Mo Harkless, who started a lot of games for him last year. He's a free agent, so I wouldn't expect that to continue. Most likely, you're going to see Kevin Knox play some more play some more minutes next season. And he was a first-round pick, so they got to see what they have in him when you're investing that kind of capital.
Mm-hmm.
They also have Reggie Bullock, Wayne Ellington, more veteran guys on the bench. They're big men too. I equate it. Julius Randle's a very solid starting power forward, no problems there. But they also have a lot of guys here in Bobby Portis, Taj Gibson, very valuable bench pieces. Once again, I would say
everybody's a bench piece, but Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson are the only two guys that should be starting for an NBA team.
Yeah, I mean, in Mitchell Robinson, we still haven't seen what he's capable of because he hasn't played enough minutes. Julius Randle deserves a start, and RJ Barrett, we don't know yet. I mean, he was a high pick for him last year. Like I said,
that's all.
That's the biggest problem. I loved RJ Barrett coming out when he got drafted by the Knicks. I was like, oh, there goes his career. I mean, because seriously though, I mean, I think that he has the ability. When I watched him at Duke, he kind of reminded me of Carmelo a little bit. Just he was a scorer first kind of player. No assists, not going to get a ton of rebounds, but I really thought he had kind of Carmelo ability, but I don't know if we'll ever see that with the Knicks. He was very inconsistent last season, which is to be expected
from a Knicks player.
And from a Knicks player. So in terms of their upcoming free agents, not a ton to discuss there. Mo Harkless has $11.5 million coming off the books. They also have Damian Dotson, and then there are two guys that they signed from the G League. I'll mention them for you, Jared Harper and Kenny Wooten. Besides that, not many names to talk about going in the free agency. When you look at their salary cap situation, kind of funny. They're paying Joakim Noah for 3 years still, so they owe him $6 million over the course of the next 2 years, so $12 million total. Actually, closer to $13 million total. And but I mean, they really don't have many big contracts. Lots of guys making like 6 to 10 million, and then Bobby Portis making 15, Julius Randle 18. And one of the notes that I wanted to make is they really lost. Their offseason was last year. I mean, that was their chance to go and try to get Kyrie and Kevin Durant, who obviously went to Brooklyn. So, I mean, they kind of blew it last offseason. And once that happened, I can't see the Knicks being good for a long time. And I remember reading something about it a few months back where people always say, oh, players want to come to the big city and the bright lights in New York. But the fact is, people don't want to play for the Knicks anymore. It's a terribly run organization, and it's a career ruiner. Why would you want to go to the Knicks? There's no good reason, unless you have an ego and you want to say, hey, I'm going to make the Knicks great again. But besides that, there's no reason to go to the Knicks.
Yeah, and a couple notes there. Bobby Portis has a club option for $15 million.
Yep.
They're not picking that up. Although, man, it's the Knicks. They might. It is the Knicks. Who knows? You see, it would be a Knicks move to pick up a $15 million option on Bobby Portis.
Yeah, I mean, I like Bobby Portis, but he
I mean,
shouldn't
I
be.
like him, but not at
He
15
shouldn't
million.
be. Yeah, exactly. Not 15 million.
Like I said, the Theo Pinson that you mentioned, club option for 1.4. I mean, probably gonna pick that up. You know, why not? At 1.4. Dotson's restricted. Then the two might be the best players, you know, because they haven't had the exposure of having to actually suit up that much. Isaiah Hicks, Jared Harper, both restricted. You know, kind of. It seems like every team, like the last two on my list, are always the G League 10-day contracts. But
Yep.
these are a type of guy. It'd be a Knicks move to pay one of these guys like 10 mil or something.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, going into off-season needs then. I mean, not much to talk about free agency wise then. Nothing too exciting. I mean, so to me it's once again just they have lots of guys that I would qualify as fantastic bench players. They really do, but I could argue that the only guy in their whole line, even RJ Barrett's probably not ready to start, but he's going to because of where he was drafted and his talent. But I mean, really Julius Randle's probably the only guy that deserves a starting spot. Mitchell Robinson too. Yeah, but I'd put Mitchell Robinson in there as well. We still need to see more from him. I mean, as good as he's been, he still hasn't gotten to really thrive in a full-time role. So I'd be interested to see how he does. But besides that, I mean, they need kind of a complete makeover still. I don't really see many great options for them in free agency just because there's not a lot of superstars on the market this offseason. I mean, unless they were somehow to acquire Giannis or Anthony Davis or a big name like that. But I don't know. I just can't see either really any big names coming to New York right now. A big thing for them probably the next few years, the next 30,000 years, they're going to be terrible. Their best shot right now is to just let their young guys develop and see what happens. We don't know if RJ Barrett can become a superstar. Is it possible? Maybe if he's given the right opportunity and the right coaching. Same with Kevin Knox. The guy barely played. I mean, he was, I think, a top 10 pick, and the guy barely played. So, they need to give him an opportunity. They should really be rolling out a starting lineup of probably Frank, RJ Barrett, Kevin Knox, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson next season. Just to give, in as much as Frank doesn't deserve to start over Alfred Payne. I mean, he's young. You might as well give him the shot to see what he's capable of, and then if he's a guy you can build around or not.
Alfred Payne's 35 years old then, huh?
Yeah, he's only 26. I just looked it up. But I mean, even still, it's just, you kind of know what Alfred Payton is at this point. So I just think they need a complete makeover. One of the big things to keep an eye on, they need a good head coach. And if they hire Tom Thibodeau, that's a terrible decision. And that's part of this player development. They need a coach that can develop these young guys. Otherwise, they have no chance unless they draw in some big names in free agency.
Yeah, my number one off-season need for the Knicks is to not be the Knicks.
Yeah.
That's their number one need. Oh, no, that's not going to happen. I mean, I don't even, it. I guess they need everything. They need everything, but probably they have good enough front court, in my opinion, with Randle and Mitchell Robinson, so maybe they don't need that. But it's the Knicks. Something's gonna happen to one of them because it's the Knicks. So they probably do need big men. But looking at the free agency, obviously they're not gonna get any of the. Like we'll mention every single pod we do here. It's a weak class. I could see a guy like maybe Wizards big man Davis Bertrands. Maybe those are the kind of level guys that the Knicks could end up getting. I mean, Davis Bertans is good. He can shoot. He's good. He's a good 3-point shooting big man. But even him, okay, that's not gonna do anything.
No.
But Gallinari, another possible name that I could see would could be. I mean, it's the Knicks. Nobody wants to go there. So like, even guys that are drafted, they should just like hold out and not play. Refuse to go. Like, who cares? It's not worth being in the NBA to play for the Knicks. It's that bad of a situation.
That's probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, but as far as draft needs, like you said, like I'd like Alfred Payne, but he's not exactly a starting caliber point guard for 29 other teams. Tyrese Halliburton, I like them. I think they need. I mean, you're basically starting from the ground up every single year with the Knicks. So, but if you're starting from the ground up, which they are, you gotta start with the foundation at point guard. So, Halliburton's a guy. I think a pairing of him, R.J. Barrett, Kevin Knox, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, bunch of young guys where if they didn't play for the Knicks, they would probably be an average team. That's the frustrating thing is that the Knicks have guys that have talent. They have guys that can actually play basketball. But because it's the Knicks, they suck. That's the frustrating thing. Like, you talk about these guys, like you talk about Mitchell Robinson, you talk about, obviously we know about Julius Randle, he'll probably be solid even with the Knicks, but you talk about guys like R.J. Barrett, you talk about guys like Kevin Knox. These are guys where if they're playing for another team, they probably would be solid players. And they have that potential to be, but it's the Knicks, like, even if they come to their senses and roll out R.J. Barrett and Kevin Knox, they realistically should be playing over 30 minutes a night. But it's the Knicks. They probably won't, so they'll suck. So that is what it is there.
Man, you're so rude towards
I am.
Knicks. Oh my gosh.
I feel so like. I feel.
You know who they need? They need Marcus Howard.
Yes. I'm glad you threw him in there, man.
I haven't gotten to talk about him.
I'm upset that you didn't mention Marcus Howard when you were talking about the Hawks podcast and Trae Young.
Yeah, I thought about it, but I was thinking I probably shouldn't. So, I mean, the Knicks in terms of the draft, I mean, you already mentioned Halliburton's an interesting name. I don't think Halliburton's going to be a superstar player, and I really think that they need a guy with superstar potential. I mean, this is a team that really needs the first pick so they can have their choice of anybody and mess it up. But I can already tell you they're probably going to get the 6th pick, and I just have a gut feeling with who they're going to take. I think they're going to take Cole Anthony. And I'm not saying that's the right decision, but Cole Anthony played high school basketball in New York City. He was I'm from New York, not the city, but Cole Anthony was a huge name in high school. And I could just see them going with the hometown boy. I don't mind Cole Anthony. He's intriguing to me. I think if he develops right, he could turn into an all-star player. Not with the Knicks. I don't think that he probably wouldn't with the Knicks.
So what you're telling me is that you think Cole Anthony is the worst player in the draft, and that's why he should go to the Knicks.
No, that's only because
you must hate Cole Anthony.
Cole Anthony's intrigued. Cole Anthony, this will sound a little insane, but he doesn't have a great jump shot. He reminds me of Derrick Rose a little bit. Not quite to that level, but just the way that he plays. He's very aggressive, tries to get to the basket. He shoots a very low percentage right now, but if he can work on that shot selection, I like Cole Anthony a lot. I see a lot of mock drafts having him go to the Spurs. I'm a Spurs fan. That would be the worst decision ever because he is like the anti-Spurs player. But we'll see what happens. I think, like I said, the Knicks are the kind of team, and it sucks for that. It would be their luck. They'll get the number 1 pick this year, and and we've said this before, there's no guy that's guaranteed to be an all-star player in this draft. That's just my opinion. I think that James Wiseman, you could argue, is the closest to that, but James Wiseman is not. He would have nowhere to play with the Knicks unless they're planning on moving on from Mitchell Robinson completely.
Would be a Knicks move.
It wouldn't surprise me. They just flat out release him.
Release him. Just throw Julius Randle while we're at it. We don't need him.
Julius Randle, oh, poor guy. I mean, that was a guy that was just looking for a contract.
Yeah. So it's kind of his fault.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Are you kidding me? And so we'll wrap things up here with looking towards the future for the Knicks. We've been ending it off every episode with this. So similar to what I said with the Pistons, this is insane, but I could say maybe the Knicks have more optimism than the Pistons. I mean, is that unreasonable?
What is that really saying, though? One team's going to win 20 games, the other team's going to win 21 games.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. But I think they're the two worst teams in the NBA. But, I mean, at least with R.J. Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, Julius Randle, even all their bench players, that's really more than the Pistons have. They have Christian Wood, Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose, but they're older, except Christian Wood, and not as enticing, I guess.
And don't forget Spy Guy.
Yeah, Spy Guy, good old Spy Guy. This is the kind of team the Knicks need to keep tanking until Amani Bates comes out, because I think Amani Bates is going to be a superstar, and that's the kind of guy that could maybe turn the Knicks around.
By then, the Knicks either won't be the Knicks, or they'll just give up, or they'll change their name, or
they'll be in the G League.
They'll be a G League team. They'll move overseas. By the time Bates comes out, I feel like the Knicks won't be the Knicks in New York. They'll be under a different name in a different country, or the NBA will just replace them with somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, and I mentioned this in the previous episode, but I'll mention it in the next one too. I cannot stress enough how disastrous I think it would be if LaMelo Ball went to the Knicks. I just think that market would absolutely eat him alive. He has a certain celebrity being a Ball, and he has a bigger personality than Lonzo. Lonzo really is a lot more conservative, where LaMelo Ball is the kind of guy that wants to play in New York because he wants the big spotlight, but I think he really needs to work on just his game and improving his game and becoming an all-star caliber player, because I think that he has some of the most upside in this draft out of anybody. It could go either way, though. He could end up being an all-star, or I think you might never hear from him again. It's up to him if he wants to
if he's a Ball, you will hear from him in some sort of way.
I'm sure, yeah. Well, you'll hear from him.
If he's begging on the corner for change, and the TMZ or ESPN will cover that.
Do we think that Lonzo and LaMelo will ever play together? I think it'd be fun to see, honestly.
They're a horrible fit with each other, though.
Terrible, absolutely terrible.
But it'd be a Knicks move to trade for Lonzo Ball, draft LaMelo.
I hope Lonzo doesn't go anywhere. The Pelicans were a perfect situation for him. He needed to go to a low-key small market, and we saw, similar to LaMelo, he just needed an opportunity to work on his game, and I really liked what Lonzo did last season.
Yeah, I like LaMelo. I don't want to see him go to New York. But I will say this: for the Knicks, if we're trying to talk basketball and what they need and what they could do, LaMelo makes sense for them.
And
if we're talking from a pure, X's and O's basketball standpoint, taking the fact that we like LaMelo out of it, he's a good fit for them in terms of among the many things that they need. I like him I like him too much, though. I don't know. I don't think any player should go to the Knicks. I think whenever the Knicks select, I just think the guy shouldn't go up on stage. He should just walk out.
Anything else? I'm tired of talking about the Knicks.
Yeah, it's make me legit tired.
All right.
I just want to curl up in the corner and just stay there for the next.
On that note, let's see. I think it's bedtime. So thank you guys for watching. We'll have a few more episodes coming out next week. This will wrap it up for this week. So we appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you like The Fantasy Mafia on Facebook. Check out our website at thefantasymafia.com. And please make sure you subscribe. You'll get a notification every time we release a video. And we do have MLB, NBA, and NFL content. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.
Peace.